Hello there, David Taylor or Mr Pelargonium back with another video for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. Today it's all about potting up annually, as I do this every year, my ivy leaf hanging basket. Which is going to go outside on our east elevation garage there. It's certainly not going to go out yet because it's far too cold, but let's get going on it. Well, hello there, welcome back to the channel. Now, every year I usually plant up a hanging basket of ivy leaf pelargoniums. Now, the only major difference is that normally towards the end of April, filming this on Monday the 22nd, I am able to hang this on the east facing elevation of our garage there, where it makes a nice display. But in the UK at the moment, really over the last week and a half to 2 weeks, it has turned really cold, unusually cold. It has been quite bright, we've had a bit of sunshine, but the wind is coming right down from the north. The temperature is only about 13 degrees here in southern England, centigrade that is, which, I don't know, what's that? 50s, in the 50s somewhere, mid to high 50s Fahrenheit, and it is exceptionally cool for the time of year, and it means that once I've planted this up, this hanging basket, it will have to stay in the greenhouse. Normally I like to get them out just to sort of acclimatise a bit, but the temperatures are usually beginning to rise by now, but it is just so cold, and we're not far off going below zero at night. It's only staying around about 1 or 2 degrees outside at the moment. It really is cold. It's been an exceptionally awful spring so far. First it was very mild and wet. Now it's turned drier, although it's absolutely pouring down today. I'm filming this in the afternoon actually. But yeah, I can't get this out. It's just too cold at the moment. So it's going to have to hang up in the greenhouse. So I'll have to move things about. Now for information, I've got my 2 big sort of multi-stem standards outside, and I'm having to bring them indoors, into the greenhouse overnight at the moment. Right pain. It's just typical that virtually ever since I put those out. And you can see in the video me putting these out. It's on my own YouTube channel, Mr Pelargonium YouTube channel. You can see that up there. It's just been awful. The weather is just so cold. It's turned very cold at the moment. Really frustrating. We sort of can't move on really at this point. My greenhouse is full to bursting, and it's becoming a pain. But I need to get this ivy leaf basket potted up purely because I want the plants to be able to grow, so that when it comes to sort of, from about late May onwards, when you generally can get plants outside, it has grown on a bit and does start to look like a fairly sort of decent basket. I do this every year. If you want to have a look back at previous years when I planted up the basket, I will, if I haven't already, I'll perhaps do a playlist of those, and I'll put this one in the same playlist. So you can see those past ones by looking in the link above. So let's get on with it. Now it's not sort of monumentally difficult. I don't generally do a great deal of videos about ivy leaf varieties because I do not grow, other than in a basket situation like this, I do not grow pot plants of ivy leaf varieties. It's just not something that I really do. I have had requests to maybe think about doing videos about bringing them on, much like we have done our test plant, about bringing them on perhaps for a show variety, and that is something I may consider for the future, so keep your eye out for that. But for now we're going to do a multi-plant hanging basket, mostly full of ivies. I have got one commercial variety zonal just to go in the middle of it, a white one just to contrast with the red ivy leaf varieties that I've got to sort of contrast with it. It's going to be a red and white theme in it. much like it was last year actually, as it goes. Now this basket is actually a 16-inch basket. It's quite big, it's quite deep, and realistically you need that. The smaller ones are okay, but realistically, because you plant a lot of individual plants in these, anything smaller than about a 14 or 16 inch, once you've got a lot of roots in there filling the basket up, it will dry out really, really quickly in the summer. And so I got a 16-inch one here, which is fine realistically. This in itself will need a fair bit of watering, but as we know, Pelargoniums are generally okay if they dry out between waters, so they don't panic too much. And of course, ivy leaf varieties, such as those which I've got here, all ivy leaf varieties which originate from a species called Pelargonium pautatum, they are designed to withstand drought. They got these really thick, waxy leaves. They are designed to withstand a lot of drought conditions. So they really do not mind drying out. And indeed, in the first instance, we will not be giving this very much water at all in its first probably month or so of its life. All we wanted to do, we want those roots to search out the dry areas looking for water to make them grow into the compost. And so that's really the justification of keeping this initially dry. Eventually, once those roots are down, you will need to water it fairly constantly. But in the early days of planting, and I think I've said this many a time before, you need to keep this pretty dry so that the roots, as I said, can really search out moisture and really grow quickly into it. Now, what I've got here is a pack. These are all commercial varieties. I don't generally use the bigger, stronger growing varieties for ivy leaf, for hanging basket work. Now I've got two giant ones here, Harvard and Colonel Baden Powell, which are absolutely huge. And I've got these virtually taking over this whole end of the glass house because again, I can't get this giant one here outside. So that's having to just wait. But I think they're probably almost too big for a basket. You want your ivy leaves to just overflow a bit to make a nice display. But I just use ordinary commercial varieties. I don't retain them. I generally disregard them at the end of a growing season. Now I've got this is a plant. These are called Sunflare Reuben Dark Red. This is a very striking dark red variety. We're fortunate in that we've got a really good commercial outlet for plants near us, and so this is where I got these from. These are called Sunflare Reuben Dark Red, as if I've not already said. I've let these dry out a little bit. I've got a fantastic root structure on them, as you can actually see. I've got 6 of those, and I've got one white, pure white, zonal, dark leaf zonal, to go in the middle, to grow up through the middle of it a bit. And that's more or less going to be it. So I'm going to get all 6 of those in here and the zonal in the middle, and I think that will be fine. They'll grow on quite quickly. I'll explain the compost. Now, the compost I've made up for this is actually a little bit of a hybrid compost. I'm using up bits and pieces that are in my store in our garage there where I keep all my compost. It's made up, I've got some old what's known as Jack's Magic compost, which is actually a part peat based. It's quite old, so I've chucked some of this together. I've got it quite airy. I've mixed it with a bit of the Silver Grow. I've got a bit of peat in there, a little bit of grit, just to give it some good drainage, because certainly initially you want it to have good drainage. So it's a bit of a multi-mix. But if I was going to do a hanging basket from the original mixes, which I recommended here in this video, I'll just point that one out, I would go for the lighter mix because you want those roots to sort of want to get out quickly. The one that I generally would have used for zonals. Right, so obviously the first thing you've got to do is get your compost in. So I'm just chucking this round. Just obviously balance up your basket. This is quite a good basket. I've had this for a couple of years. I've emptied it up. The good news is that I have made enough compost. What I will actually do, I will tip it slightly towards the camera. It doesn't need, I mean, I've got this obviously sat in a bucket. I can tip it. I know it's slightly off centre, but that's not going to affect anything that I'm doing. The hangers are just flopping about a little bit. So excuse me if you hear them bang about. Now this compost that I've made up is obviously fairly damp. So I mixed it up with a little bit of water. I think we're almost at the level really that I want to start putting things down. I mean, this is not rocket science at all. So I'm not, it's not a real sort of brain teasing thing. It's not really for me to teach a great deal about this. But there's the first one coming out of this. Now these are quite large. Now you can see here this has got a fantastic root ball. It's not too root bound, so obviously I wouldn't have thought this nursery have actually had these for too long. And they're not pot bound, so I don't need to loosen the root ball at all. There we are, just push that out so that you can then, got a bit of a gap there, push these round. Well, it's just giving you ideas really. I mean, this isn't rocket science. Everybody grows a hanging basket, particularly in the UK, very popular in the UK. I mean, it's possible that you may, if you're overseas, you may wonder what this is all about because we may not do it, but hanging baskets are very popular in the UK. Right, so that one's sort of butt up against that edge, so we'll get them all in. Now, some of these have actually dried out a little bit. Let's go a little bit careful on that one. So we've got a leading edge. It's already just beginning to sort of put on a little bit of flower. I'm going to try and work out how many I need. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to try and get 6 in. So I want to squeeze that round. I'll take off that slightly dying leaf. Now the main thing really with hanging baskets is do not be afraid to to really pack the plants in. That's the key thing. This one's dried a little bit. You can see that's pretty dry, isn't it? Oh, a good growth element to it. So that's the outside done. I mean, I'm just pushing it right down. So there we go. Now I've just about got enough room in the top there to plot my my white central themed ivy leaf variety. Zonal variety. This is just a simple white zonal, looks semi-double. Flora media geranium white. Well, geranium, we all know they're pelargoniums, of course. That's got what you would class as a decent root, hasn't it? That is. I mean, that's quite nice. We're just going to plop that down in the middle. There we are. And that's going to be it. I mean, that will grow out sort of quite quickly, I think. So what we're going to do now then, we just got to backfill some of these gaps with compost. So that's what we'll do next. So all I'm doing is filtering the compost down. Pushing it in, trying not to break any leaves. Of course, the other thing with ivy leaf varieties is that they do have a very brittle leaf and it's very easy to snap them off. Very easy to do. I mean, it won't necessarily harm the plant. It's not going to cause too many problems. I mean, obviously over time this will sink to a certain extent. Once you do get sort of watering it a little bit heavier, it will begin to sink, much like any sort of pot plant really. Firm them and down. Let's get a little bit more. And there we are. I think that's more or less it. Now, some people, drill holes out of the side of the basket and have loads more of other plants coming out. I don't do that. I mean, these will grow pretty strongly once they really get going and fill out to sort of come down to about halfway around the basket to look pretty decent, I think. So that's fine. I've got no issues with that at all. And there we are. That's more or less it. Now, what I will actually do, I've got a little bit of ordinary plain water here, and I'm just literally going to do a little bit of spotting on some of this, just a light bit of water. The ivies certainly don't need much at this point. Obviously, if it turns a little bit sunnier, I will give them another little bit of a drink. But they do not need much at this stage. Ivies are very, very, very drought tolerant. So just go a little bit careful. I'm only giving these a drink now really because one or two of them were a bit on the dry side. But it's nothing too much at all. I mean, it may be once I really do get watering these in say a month or so, I might just need to put a little bit more compost in there if it begins to drop, which is something you can, of course, do. If it needs too much. It's just plain water. And there's obviously going to be a bit of feed in this compost. You want them to go searching out in the new compost, the roots, so you only need plain water at this stage, which is fine. Okay, so there we are. That's all planted now. I'm more than happy with that. The key things to note going forward, particularly for this first month to 6 weeks, don't go flooding them with water because the ivy leaves don't need it. Even the zonal won't be happy with being totally flooded with water. In the UK, it's a bit more complicated at the moment because it is so cool. I'm going to keep this in the greenhouse until such time that it might start warming up. I mean, the east elevation of our garage where this is going to hang, it is getting sun on it all morning. So if we get a prolonged period of sunshine, it will warm that wall and hopefully I may be able to get it outside in a week or two. But in the meantime, it's just too cold for it to go out, so I'm going to keep it inside. I'll keep it dryish, just giving it that little spot of water that we just did together there. But that's more than enough for the ivy leaf varieties to take. And that will hopefully grow on fairly quickly. Something to keep an eye out for, particularly in the sort of early summer, late spring. Aphids, green fly, black fly, red fly, various different types of them. They love ivy leaf varieties, so keep an eye on the pests. It's up to you how you choose to control those, but just keep an eye out because they do love an ivy leaf variety, particularly in this sort of late spring, early part of summer. So there we are. That's just about it from me today. We've done our annual pot up of my big 16-inch hanging basket. Everything's growing. I really don't know where to put everything. I'll perhaps do another video in a week or two and we'll review some of the project plants that we're getting on with. Things like our test plant, which is growing away fairly well. It's a little bit slow, like everything is this spring, because it's been quite dull or quite cool. But in the meantime, look after yourself and good luck with your growing, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.